back to the business. I feel the spirit moving through the city. I got the light shining, come get it. Walking with Christ, moving where it's gritty. Walking with Christ, moving where it's gritty. I feel the spirit moving through the city. I see the people trying to bring them with me. We got a light, tell them come and get it. Yeah. Walk, 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 walk.
Hello, and welcome back to the In the Cut podcast with Caleb Carter. And let me tell you, I already know what you're saying. Caleb, you said that you were going to be consistent. Actually, I didn't. I said hopefully I'd be consistent after that last episode that we recorded back when I was in California. But now I've been blessed enough to make it back home, back to Houston, Texas, just for the break for the holidays, and then head back out to California for the spring semester back at USC. But we have a lot to talk about, and we're going to get straight into it. But before we do me a favor, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, at the In the Cut Show. Give your main man a follow to stay up to date with all the happenings of this podcast. And let me tell you, the beautiful thing about sports is that it provides constant action. It provides consistent drama for you to consume, consistent entertainment for you all to always watch. Matter of fact, as I'm doing this podcast now, I'm watching the Buffalo Bills and New England Patriots go at it. The Patriots are actually making it a bit of a game, 14-24. They're down. But anyway, I say that to say I wasn't going to do a podcast during my time in Houston. I don't have my usual equipment with me. I don't have my podcast microphone. So, the audio, hopefully, it's somewhat good, but it won't be the same as it would be had I had my microphone. But the reason why I felt prompted to make an episode is because we just came off a beautiful weekend in sports. If you're a football fan, you really just had a good time. Because as I'm recording this, the first round of the college football playoff has just wrapped up, right? And we had Clemson versus Texas. Texas ended up taking that game 38-24. Ohio State versus Tennessee, 42-17. Ohio State won. Penn State over SMU, 38-10, and Notre Dame over Indiana, 27-17. It was a good weekend, right? I mean, those aren't great scores.
Hot garbage. But
it was a good weekend to finally get in the swing of things here in this newly formatted college football playoff. But not only was it a good weekend that made me want to do this podcast today, but it was the discourse about the weekend that really bothered me. I have to be honest. There was a lot of talk, a lot of grandstanding, a lot of hypocrisy that was coming from a lot of trusted people, right? I mean, I have to admit, ESPN is one of the dream jobs of mine, as a aspiring sports guy, but I'd be remiss to say that ESPN did a great job at covering this first round of the college football playoff. And before I get into my opinions, I want to play this sound for you. It's a sound from ESPN's Kirk Herbstreit. And if you don't know Kirk Herbstreit, he's one of the most well-respected in the college football world, not only just with ESPN, but period. And here's what he had to say recapping the weekend, this first round playoff weekend in college football.
The first round is now complete. All home teams won. They not only won, but they won by double digits. What is your biggest takeaway from this first weekend of the 12-team playoff?
That I hope next year the committee won't get caught up in what the social media and a lot of people who are fringe fans get caught up in, which is wins.
What?
They had 11 wins. They must be good. Who did they beat? I think is much more important than how many wins you have. That's old school way of approaching it. Indiana having 11 wins and beating nobody, that doesn't mean they're one of the 12 best teams. Remember, I know, Linda, I'm not taking this out on you, but there's a big difference between deserving and best.
Yeah.
What this is all about is giving us the best 12 teams. Now, it's subjective. How you want to figure out the best 12 is up to you. But that's what I want to see. I don't want to hear about wins. How many wins? Winning's obviously important, but just because you have 11 wins doesn't mean you're better than a team that maybe had a tougher road that had 9 wins. So I think we get too caught up in how many wins you have. It's really more about who are the best 12 teams, and we need to get the best 12 teams in this tournament every year.
So I'll begin by saying this on what I do agree with Kirk Herbstreit on. Wins do not determine how good a team is. I think that's pretty evident. We saw it in college football. We saw it in the NFL. I'm old enough to remember, this was only, 2 years ago, when the Minnesota Vikings went 13-3 and got punched in the mouth come playoff time. So, to that point of Kirk Herbstreit, I understand that the record may not necessarily be indicative of how good a team is. But here's why I take issue. I just want you to think about, in this medium of sports where we have contest between two opposing parties, right? We have physical contests where we call them games. We have matchups where they can go out on the field and prove whether or not they are better than their opponent. That is what this game is built off of. It is built off of wins and losses. And for Kirk Herbstreit to go out and blatantly say we shouldn't care about wins is one of the most backwards things I've ever heard. Because let's think about it, right? I know people are going to instantly jump on Indiana, SMU. Both of those teams had 11 wins and didn't really have the best showings in the first round of the college football playoff. But here's the thing. Tennessee, and you knew it was coming.
Oh, brother.
Tennessee lost to Ohio State 42-17. People will say that Tennessee was better than Indiana because they're better than Indiana and SMU because, Tennessee beat Alabama. They had a tougher road, although Tennessee doesn't have 11 wins like those other two teams. But Tennessee went to Ohio State and still got blown out. So let's establish one thing. The outcome of the game shouldn't determine whether or not a team was supposed to be in that playoff spot. You heard Kirk Herbstreit say that let's get rid of the term deserve or which team is the most deserving, and let's try to get the best 12 teams in. And he admits that that is a subjective way of looking at it. That argument is self-defeating, because if it's a subjective way of looking at it, then we will never get the best teams. Because I could say that, Miami should have been one of the 12. Someone else may say that Alabama should have been one of the 12. When we make it a subjective, arbitrary type of decision-making process, we'll never get the best 12 teams. So we have to come up with a mechanism in order for us to do this in a way that is objective, right? And many people point to the NFL. They look at the way that the NFL playoffs does it, and they say, they do it right. And I would agree. What they do is teams play in divisions, and if you win your division, you are rewarded with an automatic bid to the playoff, right? Whether you win 10 games or maybe it takes 8 or 12 or 13 or 9. But if you win your division, you get an automatic bid. We see that with the NFC South, right? That has been a conference where the win total may not be the best, but since we have to reward their division winner, they always get someone in the playoff. And then we have what is called the wild card, which is basically at large bids, where we look at, okay, after those first four division winners get their automatic bids, we look at who has the best record, and they are put into the playoffs. I wonder if there is a way that we could implement that into college football. And an idea that I have is, maybe we take, since we have 4 conference champions, we take the 4 conference champions and we reward them for winning their conference in the Power 4. So they get buys. They get a bye week, right? They get automatically into the playoff and they get a bye week. And then the rest of those 8 seeds, those at-large bids, we should look at their record. They should be rewarded for the games that they have won. Because, once again, if we're trying to do this objectively, there has to be a standard, and wins and losses happens to be the way that we determine these games. So I believe that should be the standard. Oh, wait. That is actually what the playoff format for this year is.
My goodness, what an idea. Why didn't I think of that?
But yet people want to disagree and say, oh, the playoff seeding needs to blow up, or they didn't get the right 12 teams in, or, this was bad for college football. An interesting stat is, in 2023, the NFL wild card playoffs, the average margin for victory was 17.3 points. So the winning team, on average, won by 17.3 points. This year's college football playoff first round, the average team won by 19.2 points. Not that big of a difference, but the reaction to the different leagues has been vast. And that's because college football has tried for too long to make it about the eye test or who we think might be the best. We want to make it about hypotheticals. But when we objectively look at this, I believe that the best 12 teams got in. Right? It is not SMU's fault that they went undefeated, lost in the ACC championship game, and only had 1 loss on the season. Nor is it Indiana's fault that up until playing against Ohio State, they were undefeated. You have to reward these teams for the games that they play. But when we make it a beauty contest and say, oh, who did they beat, or 9-3 Alabama, they would have given Notre Dame a better run for their money. You can't even say that with confidence because, again, Tennessee, who we thought was a better team than Indiana and SMU on paper, went to Ohio State and still got blown out. Got the doors ripped off. So, can we stop with this notion that the wrong 12 teams got in, or somehow we should... I saw Colin Cowherd say this, that Indiana should no longer be let into the college football playoff. We got to stop wanting to exclude the little guy. Now, I will say, I'll admit this. Could a conversation be had about maybe shrinking the field? Sure. Because like many people have said, 12 teams realistically don't have a shot to win the national championship. Maybe 8 have a legitimate shot to win the national championship. So that's a conversation I'm willing to hear. But this constant complaining about, Alabama or Ole Miss or South Carolina should have gotten in. Maybe they should have won their games. the games have to matter. And they lost their games. But that was my little rant about college football. I'll do one more topic before I get out of here because, and this can be kind of fun, but the Chiefs and the Texans also played on Saturday. The Chiefs, Texans, Ravens, Steelers all played on Saturday. All four of those teams also will be playing three games in 11 days. Can the NFL stop talking about player safety? They don't care because what is that? 3 games in 11 days? That's insane. But anyway, the Texans lost to the Chiefs. And if you know that I'm a Texans fan. The Houston Texans have to root for the hometown team. Tank Dell goes out with a broken leg on a touchdown pass. Prayers up for Tank Dell. They call a roughing the passer, retroactively, we might add, on Patrick Mahomes after it looks like he fumbles and it is picked up for a touchdown. They retroactively say it wasn't a fumble, but it was an incomplete pass, and there was roughing the passer on that incomplete pass.
You don't find that suspicious? You don't find that suspicious? You don't find that suspicious?
And I'm not one of these people who likes to say that these sports are rigged, because I think these players, put too much into it. I think, the physical wear and tear is real. But I gotta be honest. The Chiefs, it looks like the refs are in their pockets. I mean, they got some dark magic going on, because it seems like every time that they should lose a game, something happens. I mean, and it's the most inexplicable thing, right? I mean, we saw it with the Raiders that one game. I mean, somehow when the Raiders are in field goal range, possibly about to win the game, they mess up a snap. Or the Broncos, they get their field goal blocked. It always seems to be something when another team is going up against the Chiefs. But that's my conspiracy theory that I'll probably die on that hill, honestly, because it's become too much. But anyway, definitely want to thank you again for listening to the In the Cut podcast with your main man, Caleb Carter. Once again, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, at the In the Cut show for all the happenings. Thank you once again for listening. Be safe. Be blessed. We out.